Hello and welcome back to Appleosophy Weekly, your favorite tech podcast where we unwrap the tech of today. And today we're doing that with a really special guest, Mr. Aaron Zollo from ZOLLOTECH. How you doing, Aaron?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I got a little pep in my step today. I think it's because I woke up earlier. Full glass of lime water, doing good. Before we get into the tech news, a huge request that I got from people when they heard that you were going to be on the show is they said, can you get him to do the, "Hi, it's Aaron here from ZOLLOTECH."
Hi, everyone. Aaron here for ZOLLOTECH, and we're here today on the Appleosophy Weekly podcast.
Isn't that awesome, guys? He's like the golden voice of tech. I love it. Now, I want to talk about YouTube a little bit. Now, I want to ask you, what got you started in YouTube? What motivated you to start a YouTube channel in the first place? Was it just your affinity for Apple or tech in general?
So this goes back to 2008, really. So that's back when I didn't have an iPhone. I was watching YouTube a little bit, and then I eventually got an iPhone and started watching case reviews and things like that. And there's a guy, unfortunately, he's not around anymore, but his name's Carlos. It's me, Morpheus. And if you've ever seen him, he was kind of the first person I watched do that. And I thought I could do that and maybe I could get some free stuff. And I worked, I was working in network operations and things like that for years. And it just became something that I did as a hobby. And as it started to grow and then kind of just became something that got more and more views, it turned into something that I went full time on as it interfered with work. And then I went full time. And yeah, it's once that becomes a problem for your work, you'd make that choice and decide to go full time is really what happened. So I said, okay, well, I'll do this and then I'm all in. So I kind of just went down the same thing with cases at first and thought, well, let me try this, and just kind of found what I went after what I liked, and it's kept doing what I liked. So it stuck.
That's such a cool story. It really just starts with passion.
Right.
And one of the things that motivated me to start my podcast and really go full force is I heard a quote from Steve Jobs shortly before I started this. And he said, look around you, the people who are living your dream, the people that are doing what you want to do, everything around you was built by people no smarter than you are at this time. So there's no reason why you shouldn't go for it. The clock is ticking. The powerful play of life is going to go on. There's no time like today.
Yeah, that quote in particular influenced me too. I thought, wait a minute.
That's interesting.
You guys all did the same thing. I can do that too. And maybe I can do it better. Was kind of where I was going with that.
That's awesome. I love that. I love when people come on this show and they actually have passion for what they do. It's not just going through the motions. And even for you, you said it's become much like a job, a full-time job. I mean, you're uploading videos every day of the week pretty much.
Yeah, 3 yesterday. Yeah, yesterday in particular.
I noticed you pulled a couple all-nighters the week of WDC too.
Just
WWDC.
about, yeah. Yeah, you didn't sleep a whole lot there. Yep.
I'm watching your videos and I'm curious. I'm looking up at the time on your iPad. It says 1:02 a.m. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It takes a long time. Those 30-minute videos are 6-8 hour jobs. They're maybe more. Depends.
They should do, you know how they do the Marvel videos where they unwrap all the little details?
Yes.
I'm gonna start doing ZOLLOTECH videos. Let's zero in on how late he actually stayed up. Oh, 1:03 a.m. You zoom in on the time, you can tell.
Well, so some of that helps where I've worked second shift forever, and or I used to. And so I would come home afterward and then record the video. So to stay up, that was kind of everyone's in bed. My wife's in bed, kids, and I can just record and it's quiet.
I would feel like I had to whisper.
Yeah, well, no, it was a separate room that was pretty closed off, but that was a while ago.
Did you soundproof it like how you have now yet?
No, back then it was just a camera, a Canon PowerShot point and shoot. I just said, let's try this. So,
do you still film most of your videos with an iPhone?
No, I did. Well, so yes and no. So if I'm outside, yes. If not, then I'm generally using this. So it's an FX3. Or I'm using Sony stuff. I've gone from Panasonic to Sony to Canon, back to Sony, things like that.
Now, I want to ask you a question here.
Mhm.
What is your favorite Apple product of all time?
So what comes to mind immediately is the iPhone 4S. I think that was the first one where it went from a plastic product to a premium product.
Hmm.
It went to a stainless steel frame and glass, and it was on a different level, I think, than a 3GS that I had before that. So it was just much nicer.
I agree. I remember when they unveiled that, they said its closest kin is a Leica camera.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It felt so premium in the hand, and there was a weight to it. It felt like jewelry.
Right. Yeah. And that's Steve Jobs, what he said anyway, I think, right? That it felt like jewelry.
I think I coined that. I
Oh,
thought
well,
I on
maybe he
my.
did. I don't know. I thought I heard him say that, but maybe
We'll
not.
never
I don't know.
know. We got to go back and
Yeah.
watch the keynotes. It
Right.
might be a Steven Note marathon today. Now, what do you think about, just because you brought it up, I want to talk about it.
Sure.
What do you think about how the first iPhone came out? A lot of people don't know this. The first iPhone was going to launch with the plastic screen.
Mm-hmm.
And months before launch, Steve Jobs calls his team and says, "Hey, I'm pulling this thing out of my pocket and there's scratches all over the place. This thing needs to be glass." And they tell him, "Look, if you want to change it to glass, this is going to be a supply chain nightmare. We're launching in a few months. These things are coming off the conveyor belt like hotcakes. You need to figure out what we're going to do." Long story short, it ends up launching with a glass screen. So the very first iPhone had a glass screen, an aluminum back, very premium feel to it. And then they moved to all plastic with the 3G and 3GS. And then by the time we got the 4, 4S, so forth, it went back to those premium materials, the stainless steel and glass and the aluminum with the iPhone 5. Why do you think they went cheaper on the materials with the 3G and 3GS?
Maybe early on it was just what they could get done for the shape. I'm not sure. Or maybe they just didn't have the supply chain, or I'm not sure. Maybe they were just
It
trying
was
to
a lot
see if
more
it was.
affordable once they moved to the 3G. That was a
Yeah.
huge thing. And it's
So,
like they were packing in more features, but it was slightly more affordable, which is interesting.
right. It was real plasticky, and I mean, it worked. I was a
I
little
mean,
disappointed from the 1 to the 3G because it was aluminum to plastic. So some people really like it, but I like the metal feel.
now, obviously, there's been quite a bit of Apple news this week. I want to start off with Apple's beta software program. Now, they launched the first public beta of iOS 15 and iPadOS 15 that's now available to everybody, to the public. You can sign up on beta.apple.com. Now, the way they did this was interesting. Typically, it's beta 2, 3, maybe even 4, and the same build number that the devs get is what the public gets for the public beta. What they did this time is they just uploaded a second version of beta 2 with a
Right.
revised build number and then made that the quote unquote public beta. Why do you
Right.
think they did that?
Well, I wish they'd tell us, to be honest. In the notes, there's nothing new. So I think probably they found some stability issues, or some people were having, maybe there was something causing the phone to have issues or crash, or who knows. There's so many reports that come in through
Security flaw or
feedback and all
something?
that. Right. And they didn't say specifically because they didn't update the notes to go with the re-release. So, but we have had re-releases in the past where they find weird bugs in them, but it's not very often. So I really thought they were just going to release it under the current beta 2, and I thought it'd be today since they said July. So
Yes. Yes. So they actually that's interesting takeaway. I didn't catch that they released it early.
yeah, a
Technically.
day, but yes,
A day
today.
early. They said it wasn't coming till sometime in July. That's interesting.
Right.
Now, the Apple beta software program is free to everybody. All you have to do is log on with your Apple ID and register your device and download a profile. And you can begin testing on your iPhone, iOS 15, iPadOS on your iPad, macOS Monterey, tvOS 15, and even watchOS 8 for your Apple Watch out there. Now, do you recommend testing on the watch?
No, I normally I don't, unless it's maybe you have an old one and you upgrade it or something. Just because if anything happens, then you have to send it into Apple. You bring it to an Apple store, or you have to send it in, and then they can downgrade it for you. There's no way
Have you ever
for
had to do
us
that?
to. One, I did once for my uncle, actually. So
Oh
not
boy.
for myself. He sent me his watch. He lives in a different state. Sent me his watch. I tried to install it, update it, did whatever I could. It wouldn't work, so I had to bring it to Apple, and then they fixed it. It took like 3 days, and then they got it back.
Yeah, I had to do that for the WatchOS 3 beta.
Oh, okay, that's a ways ago. Yep.
I was just too excited for faster app launch, Aaron.
Oh, right. Yeah, that
I
was
couldn't
back when
help it.
everything was super slow.
Do you remember that when you used to pull up your Apple Watch and you'd see the little pinwheel for what felt
Hmm.
like days?
Yes, it's much, much better now. So,
Now, I want to move on to our next story here. We have a report from the ELEC. Now, this is a publication we've seen before. Now, they're talking about a new iPad Air that will release either, look how vague these rumors are getting, either next year or in 2023. That's a 10.86 inch. They're really clear to say that 10.86 inch OLED iPad Air. And they said this is going to be using the typical flat, aka rigid OLED panel. So it won't be anything that's doing any kind of fancy folding, or it'll just be the tricks you see on the screen for curved displays, like the sub-pixel anti-aliasing, where you can't see the edges, and things that we've seen all the way back to the 10R, but in OLED form. It just seems like they're really keeping the iPad Air at the whole iPad almost Pro kind of thing.
right.
It's like they should call it the iPad economy.
Yes,
It's not quite first class. It's not quite coach.
yeah, they always, well, so the iPad Air 4 that launched late last year really isn't economy other than a couple little things, but it's
Mm-hmm.
half the price of the Pro. So for a lot of people, that's generally what I recommend. And if they bump it to an OLED, I'm sure a lot of people will appreciate that, but there will be some that don't, but there will be, if you've followed anything I do with what's called PWM,
Yes,
with the way the
pulse width
screens flash.
modulation. Yeah.
Yeah, so it controls brightness by flashing the screen faster or slower. And not all OLEDs do that. Technically, LG TVs don't, supposedly. So I have one, that's why, and it doesn't bother my eyes. So some of the phones, I noticed this from the iPhone 10. And so I stopped. I've been really particular about it because I couldn't use an iPhone 10 without feeling nauseous. So once we got to the iPhone 11 series, it wasn't a problem for me as they bumped the speed up. So if they put that in an iPad, hopefully it would be fast enough and not be a problem. But
I would hope so. I like
yeah,
that you covered that on the first time I ever heard the abbreviation PWM. I was watching one of your videos, and I love how you you not only made that public that this was an issue, that people were experiencing this, because I mean, just everyday journalism, I hadn't heard anything about this, that this was a problem, that it
yeah,
was making people feel nauseous or dizzy just using an everyday consumer product. So it's good to see that they started mitigating that with the iPhone 11 and so on. Hopefully, it'll all be in place when they release an OLED iPad, so to speak.
right.
You switched to the iPhone 10R for quite a bit, correct? Because it was bothering you on the 10.
A while ago, yeah, yeah. Now I'm just using a 12 Pro Max, but yeah,
Yeah.
the 10R during that sort of transition, the 10, 10S, I kind of went back and forth a lot because I could tell a difference between when I'd switch, my eyes just were strained, or I might get a headache, or and that problem went away later on. But yeah, it was definitely something you could notice. It tends to be that you can sometimes see those flickers. Now, technically, you're not supposed to be able to, but my daughter says the same thing. So
Okay.
there's not, but my wife doesn't. So it's kind of those things. I've tested it with a ton of people and done a ton of research on it. And then there's a website, Notebook Check, that actually lists PWM now for everything, and they actually
Oh,
test it.
wow.
So I started going off of that when I was researching it, and it's a real thing. It's about 1 in 10 that have it. So when I hear OLED for an iPad, I think, okay, hopefully they've dealt with this issue, because for most people it'll be fine, and it'll look great either way. But the mini LED display of the current iPad Pro, there's a little bit of that going on apparently, but it's so fast, like I think 10,000. So anything over 240 hertz was
Mm-hmm.
how fast it's flashing is pretty much fine. But they're in the 10,000 range, I think, something like that.
Oh,
So
wow.
you're never going to see it for most people. It's not going to bother.
Is on OLED, is smearing something that bothers you?
No, nope. I
No?
know people mention it all the time, that or purple
Yeah.
fringing and things like that. I've just come to the conclusion that happens. It's like, yeah, it's
Well,
there, but it's not great, but it's there. But
and no display is perfect. Apple has according to the DxOMark, one of the best displays on the market. But you can only they're calibrated as best as Apple can calibrate them. There's still the disadvantages that come with OLED sometimes that you'll see, like smearing, like purple fringe, things like that. Not everybody sees these things, so it's hard to measure how prevalent these issues may be.
Right. The green tint issue that people constantly bring up for the current iPhones, not to go down a whole other path, but that's brought up a lot. And I've never seen it personally. I've seen a bunch of it from family members and everything. I'll check. I've never seen it personally, but other people have sent it to me where it's a thing. So no panel is perfect. And there's all sorts of software tricks they use to mitigate a lot of that.
Mm-hmm. Part of this report, it states that the larger iPad, the iPad Pro, will also be gaining a OLED display by 2023 at least. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, then what is MiniLED for? Is that just a stopgap to OLED? What are your thoughts on that? Apple recently switched to MiniLED with the 2021 iPad Pro that was released shortly before WWDC, for those of you that aren't familiar.
I think, I'm not sure. That's where I generally tend to think of OLED then Mini LED, but they both have their own issues. So Mini LED could have the blooming issue because you're backlighting something. Although it is there, but it's only there like in the darkest of scenes or things like that. So it's not something that you would normally see unless the background is black, at least on mine anyway. So I had to figure out how to show that in a video once. So it's not it's not that easy to replicate for everyone. It just depends what kind of content you use, of course. But OLED has the advantage of not having the backlight, so you're never going to have that bloom. But there's the Mini LED can go much brighter, and it's incredible for HDR. It's one of those things where I guess it depends what you're going for. If you're going for HDR, I'd say Mini LED is better. So if you're going for OLED and you want true black and all those things, they're very close. But I think it's all just kind of a stopgap until we have micro LED.
Yes, micro LED is the real paradigm shift in displays, and that's the huge takeaway right there. Is a lot of people aren't talking about Mini LED yet because you don't see it in everyday consumer products yet. It's still really expensive to implement. And I have to tell you, a couple of weeks ago, we got into a discussion in OLED versus Mini LED. And I mean, we got totally into the weeds because they both have their pros and cons.
Yeah, it really depends which, what you prefer, I guess. For me, the blooming thing doesn't really bother me. So on my iPad, I don't notice it, but because I have it on light content or YouTube or whatever. So for that, I never really notice it. But with the OLED, you can see a difference. But when you watch HDR content on that new iPad, it's incredible. So definitely. I guess it just depends what it really comes down to your preference, I think, when it's that. Of course, but OLED's thinner too.
Yes. Do you think trending toward OLED ultimately is the right decision for the iPad at this point in time? I mean, I'm sure we'll see a Mini LED iPad at some point, or a micro LED.
If they can do micro, I would say no, they'll never do it. Because that's where, if you've ever been to CES, they had some micro LED panels and things, and they're basically OLED, but not OLED. So, but brighter. So they have all the advantages of both, really, because they're so small, you don't really get the bloom effect. So if we can get to that in a couple of years with all the shipment and the chip shortages and all that stuff, if they can actually get there, then I think they'll just switch to it. If they can't, then maybe they will go OLED.
That's why this is so, a lot of people are saying this is so uncharacteristic of Apple to do this. They don't really focus on stopgap technologies. They will wait. They will use an outdated panel until they can find a panel that is 3 times as better, not just a little bit better. And so a lot of people are confused by this move. But I have to say, I have the Mini LED iPad Pro, the M1 iPad Pro in front of me, and I'm in love with it. Like you said, watching movies, YouTube videos in HDR, it's been wonderful. Photo editing, I know I have that contrast ratio, that true to life color right there on the screen. So it's been great, except for when I'm reading. When I'm reading at night and I'm in dark mode, the smearing I have to blink my eyes a couple times because it's so prevalent. And
Oh,
it's
okay.
only in that one scenario, dark mode at night, reading in iBooks. And it's just, it
Okay.
looks like someone painted the words on my screen and smeared watercolor everywhere.
That's why I haven't seen it. I should check that. I don't read on my iPad very rarely. So
I'm sure
other
you
than,
read one of those, the 9 to 5 Mac in dark
sure, I'll
mode.
read
One of those
light
Mac
mode.
boomers.
Light mode. Yeah, I know. I always use light mode. Strangely, now I'm going to have to check.
So these are some important questions related to your channel
Hmm.
and you as a person. Do you use automatic, or
I
are you
do.
one of those people that just sticks in light or dark mode?
No, I use automatic.
Okay,
I use
so it's
automatic. Yeah,
calibrated to sunset.
right. I don't like I like sunlight, a lot of sunlight. So
Yes.
when I'm editing, I'm next to a window. Well, I'll make sure everything's right. Then I'm next to a window, and then I like to be. I'm in a box studio type thing right now, so I like to be out at least near some real light for a while, and
Mm-hmm.
I just like things to be bright and vibrant. So that reflects probably somewhat in thumbnails and things I do. I like everything bright and vibrant.
I
But
love that because that's my
oh,
style. I don't know.
oh
That's why I
okay,
gravitated toward your content a long time ago. But I love. Right now, I have to shut this window
right.
because if it's open, it washes out the webcam on the
Oh, right,
iMac.
right,
So,
sure.
but
Yeah,
normally I'd have all these windows open, a couple fans going. I just love the light, the natural light. There's no substitute for natural light.
right, same exact thing. So when it's nighttime, sure, I'll switch to dark mode. It seems to be easier on the eyes, and I might switch to dark mode for certain parts of different videos and things. A lot of people like that more. So it
Those
just depends on
dramatic
what I'm
video.
showing. Right.
You should get it. You should cut your studio in half. Do a little piece of tape, draw a line, and one
Dark
half will
mode
be
light.
completely white, and the other half will be completely black.
Right. Could do that.
So when a video launches at night, you can use the black side of the studio.
Right. Sure.
You really
Although, yes, but then you've got the other side of the world that watches too. So it's already morning. So it just won't work.
couple questions about your setup again. Do you
Sure.
use your personal phone when you're doing this?
Yes.
The demos and stuff?
That's why everything is blurred. That takes forever. But yes, because I feel I want to be so okay for 99% of it. Yes. So if I'm showing right now, because we're running two different betas, 14.7 and 15 beta 2.
Yes.
14.7 is my phone, and it's fully set up identical to the other one, accounts and everything, but it's not what I use daily because I can't use two at the same time.
Yeah.
Not 100% anyway. So I'll typically the blue iPhone 12 Pro Max that's my main phone in my pocket that I show in all my videos. And so part of it is I want to be genuine when I do long-term reviews. I've actually used this phone that long. So I'll do some reviews on the 12 or whatever, but I will never say that this was my main phone, or I want to be as genuine as possible with that. So if I have scratches or I don't have scratches, it's because I used it the same as all the other phones I've used since iPhone 1. And then on screen, it's a bit of a pain with all the different accounts logged in and things like that. You have to be really, so if you show email, I have to show a certain email account that doesn't show any addresses. So I don't know if everyone does that. I don't think they do, but
a lot of people just have like a dump phone.
Right.
An
And I
iPhone
could do
10R.
that, but
why? It would be less genuine. Yeah.
right. So when I talk about battery life, it's my battery life. That's how I've used the same sort of setup
You're actually
for
daily
years.
driving the machine. Yeah.
Right.
I like
so
that.
that's what this is. So I may switch from time to time, but when you see, if you go to the battery sections where I talk about battery in the video, it's loaded because I've used it that whole amount of time. If my battery health goes down, which is a big thing for a lot of people, it drives me nuts, but
Yeah.
it drives me nuts in that it's a percentage and it makes a lot of people freak out. But I think it's gone down finally to 98% or whatever. That's normal use and wear. If there's scrapes on it, there's scrapes on it. It's just kind of.
You clarify in your videos that the whole battery health thing is calibrated or checked every time you update the phone.
Right.
It's not, I just wake up one morning and all of a sudden it's 90%.
Right. And I don't know how often Apple checks it. I'm sure there's some sort of, whether that's 5 days, 10 days, or every day in their software. I don't know. But Yeah, it's checked. And I say that because so many people message me and say, my
Mm-hmm.
battery health went down. Should I bring it to Apple and get it replaced? And I'm like, no, it's
Like, no.
normal. It's what happens until someone invents a better battery. It's just what happens. So yeah, that's
One of the things that just drives me bonkers is, and you see with these lithium batteries, the smaller they get, the bigger this issue becomes as far as
mhm,
quickly declining battery health. It drives me bonkers with the Apple Watch because the battery is so small.
mhm.
Within 6 months of owning this thing, I was at 91.
Yeah, I think I'm down quite a bit. I think I'd have to look, but yeah, that's probably my biggest thing with Apple and all of the sustainability things. I think if you're going to really want them to be long term, I know you can replace them in the store, but make it easier or something so we can do it. That's one of my things where I'm all for that. If you can replace it, then great. I'm checking right now. I'm down to 96 on it's the
96.
Series 6. And so yeah, I think it's kind of one of those things where I know it's a toss up between sealing the phone for IP rating and then
Mm-hmm.
making the battery swappable. So there's compromises there, but I definitely would like it to be easier and not
Now,
glued in, for example. That
now,
sort
that's
of
an
thing.
important question. Are you big on the right to repair? Is that
Yeah.
important to you?
Yes, I mean you can't do much with system on a chip and things like that. But
Mm-hmm.
yes, I mean a battery seems like if you want something long term, sure. Yeah, I think you bought it, it's yours.
Mm-hmm.
If I want to fix it, I mean, I've been into cars for years, and I've fixed cars and things like that. And so, yeah, why not? If you need to change your brakes, why not? That sort of thing.
But like you said, it's a toss up between everybody expects everything to be sealed tight, dust and water resistant these days.
Right.
So, is do you make it an in-store service thing or a mail-off service thing? Do do you create something that reseals itself so that people can just pop it open like an old cell phone, throw their own battery in? How are you going to regulate
Right.
that? Are they certified batteries? Where do you get them
Right.
from? How do you get them? Are stores going to sell them, or do you call and order them? I mean, different things we have to think. That's the whole infrastructure change.
For sure. And I think as far as the batteries, Apple could fix that problem really quickly. It'd just make them cheaper, sell them cheaper, and then take out the rest of the people.
Well,
For a
well,
reasonable amount, you can get a
yeah.
genuine for 30 or 40 instead of a aftermarket for 20 or something like that. I think would be better.
Versus what is it now? Is it used to be 50 and then they raised it again?
I think the max is 70 or 80. I'd have to
70 or
look. They have a website that
that's
shows
quite
them.
hefty.
It is, yeah. It's for a
Now,
battery. Yeah.
what I'm waiting for is the paradigm shift for batteries. We'll finally get like hydrogen batteries and things like that. Do you think that that's just around the corner, or do you think we'll be waiting quite a bit for that?
So, as someone who's into cars and electric cars and things like that, so I think, according to Toyota, they have a solid state battery,
Mm-hmm.
and no one's been able to do this reliably so far, mass production wise. If they can do that, I think that will be the first shift because those can charge much faster. They're less volatile as far as
Oh,
fires and things, and they technically can last more cycles. So I think that's probably the first thing. If they're telling the truth, I would imagine they are since they're a
and
huge company, but you never know. So
that's
that's when they're
important. Is
switching.
what do those batteries look like? Can you miniaturize those at
Right.
an iPhone or even an Apple Watch scale? It'll be interesting to see. But I like that you have that background, particularly with the auto industry, and that you have that level of commentary because what we're seeing with electric cars, just some of that technology, we're waiting for the day that that's in our phone. That's really cool.
Right. Yeah, where you have liquid cooling in a Tesla for the battery. I
Hmm.
don't know that you're going to see that in a phone. It's not really that necessary. You have things
Razer
like
tried
that.
that,
And
didn't they?
yes,
Liquid cooled Razer phone.
I'm not sure. I mean, there's some liquid cooled processor blocks and things, but like on a
Hmm.
phone, I'm not sure. I mean,
The
they
vapor
have
cool.
the vapor chamber, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, a few of the Android phones do that. Quite a few of them.
Now, I want to talk about the Apple Watch International Band collection. Now, I have them pulled up in
Okay.
front of me here, and we can kind of take a look at them together if you'd like. Now,
Okay.
Apple says, quote, to celebrate the indescribable drive and competitive spirit of all athletes and fans, end quote.
Mhm.
So, the way I see it, the reason why I had to pick one of these up is because there's a United States version, Now,
Hmm.
this is the Nylon Sport Loop. Comes just in time, not just for the Olympics, but more importantly, the 4th of July. So I
Oh,
have that
okay.
patriotic spirit. I
Right.
picked one of these up for myself. It comes in 22 limited edition Sport Loop bands with colorful designs that represent those nations across the globe. Now, have you taken a look at these and have you ordered one for your?
So, yes, I've taken a look at them. I I went to order one and I forgot I need to order the USA one. I talked about this in a video a few days ago, and some people in the comments of that video said that there's all of these, but no USA band. And I'm just like, so I went back and looked. I'm like, there's a
Mhm.
USA band. What do you mean?
It's
Right. So I'm like, yeah, okay, well, whatever. But yeah, I'll be getting one. I won't buy all of them. I'm not going to do that for a video or anything. Maybe I should, but I'm not going to do that for a
Do you
video.
think there's YouTubers out there that will?
Unbox therapy, maybe. I don't know.
All 22 bands.
Lou, right? Or maybe they'll send them to Marquez. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah.
But no, I think I'll get the USA one. I mean, any country, if you want to do that, that'd be great. And I need to order it right after this. So I'll do that.
I think they're classy. I ordered
Yeah.
mine. Mine's supposed to come tomorrow. I don't know when the people will be watching this, likely Monday. But when I
Okay.
say tomorrow, I mean July 2nd. I'm really excited for mine. I think it's cool. It's classy. And like I said, perfect for the 4th of July if you're in the US, and perfect for the Olympics if you're anywhere across the
Sure.
globe. Yeah,
Yep.
really classy.
Yeah. It was great to see all the comments of people saying they were going to order them and what
Yeah,
country they were from, whether that be
yeah.
Netherlands, Russia, whatever.
Something to show the spirit.
Right. Yep. It's
That's what the
great to see
kids want
people do
these
that.
days.
Yes.
Something to show the spirit. You know,
The
they ought to
kids.
make a
Yep.
Supreme band. That'll
Wow.
make them happy.
Yeah. They can partner
In
with them.
collaboration. So earlier this month, Tim Cook had an announcement to employees. He had a memo where he said Apple's going to adopt a hybrid work plan. Now that means later this year, there's certain people that are essential. They need to be, that is, they need to be on campus.
Mhm.
And there's other people that can continue to work virtually. Now, there was some backlash from employees on that, saying, why can't we submit a claim to continue to work virtually? Everybody
Mhm.
assumes that these employees in particular, this group or this number, want to return. A lot of us are working more efficiently, becoming more productive from home. We'd like to continue to work from home. And so they penned a letter back to Cook and said, we should be able to do remote work if we, so decide to do so.
Mhm.
And in an internal video that was obtained by The Verge, Apple's senior VP of retail and people, Deidre O'Brien, she was recently with Cook at the Tower Theater opening, the Apple store in Los Angeles. They obtained a video of her, and she says, quote, if we take a moment to reflect on our unbelievable product launches this past year, the products and the launch execution were built upon the base of years of work that we did when we were all together in person. That is to say, in-person collaboration is essential to our culture and our future, end quote. So they're receiving backlash again for this. So they're saying these people in particular that have been asked to return later this year have to return, that we can't have everybody working remote. And so Apple employees sent another letter to Cook, and they said, quote, now Apple is essentially denying that request, saying any remote work decisions will be made, quote, on a case-by-case basis, with new remote positions requiring executive approval. Now, this is kind of what they wanted. They wanted a case-by-case thing where it could be approved. You could ask, hey, can I continue to work from home? But the fact that it's on an executive approval thing, do you think that's a bit much?
Well, so I'm a bit torn by this because I've always been a big proponent of working from home
Mm-hmm.
before I did this full time. But the way Apple works, they're built around that collaboration. So if you look at Steve Jobs, well, the new Apple Park campus, it's built around collaboration. The whole idea is everyone will interact. The same with Pixar that Steve Jobs built, that whole
Mm-hmm.
building. Same
The whole
thing.
idea that it's a circle. So the designers run into the software engineers when they have to go to the bathroom or something,
Right.
to eat or whatever it may be. The idea that it's a circle, that's why.
Right. And so any of those things that Steve Jobs has worked on, typically result in those sorts of collaboration where you get good ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're at home and you're managing servers, that's where it depends what you do. So if you're writing documentation for something, that doesn't necessarily need collaboration, where designers, I would imagine, need that collaboration where they can work together, talk together. And I know it's convenient to be at home. I've done that. So I've had remote jobs and I've had jobs in the workplace, and it's nice to have that option, but again, you don't have the collaboration. I tend to think that if you're at home, if you're enjoying what you're doing, you're probably more likely to do a better job in some cases, because you need to prove yourself more because you're not in the workplace, instead of you're just wasting 8 hours a day or whatever you work there. So I do think it's more of a case by case basis, depending on what the job is. So if you're a designer, sure, I think you need to be together. I don't know if you need to be together all the time, but it definitely would help. Just maybe you go back, design a new iMac. Well, I'll get back together on Wednesday. Maybe, who knows? Yeah. I don't know how they
just
work.
Just design the new iMac. Just
right.
depends. And throw something together.
Right. You design one, we'll all come together, see what it looks like, and then we'll go from there. I don't know how they want to do that. So I don't know how they work internally that way, but it seems like Apple in particular, I think that's probably quite important for how they operate.
I think it's a key pillar for them, a key characteristic of why their products are so innovative, is you do have that deep personal interaction where people are, I mean, the whole campus is built around people running into each other, the right teams.
Now, Microsoft, I think, is letting people work from home forever.
Yes, and Google and Facebook are working.
But they're more
work from home indefinitely.
And they're less about design and how things feel and work together. They're more about the back end of AI or whatever they're working on next. So
AI. We've been hearing AI for a decade.
We have.
The future of AI. And it's like Siri still can't understand context.
Right.
That's a privacy problem. Now, we have some stats from Counterpoint Research. Now they're talking iPhone 12 sales. And they're basically saying that the iPhone 12 represents another major super cycle as far as iPhones go. And they're comparing it to the iPhone 6. So iPhone 12 sales crossed the 100 million unit mark in April 2021. Now that's 2 months earlier than the iPhone 11 and pretty much in line with what we saw with the iPhone 6. And iPhone 6 is considered one of the best selling smartphones of all time. So this, for the iPhone 12 to reach this milestone, is pretty huge, and they call it a super cycle. And I think it's funny because people like me and you that do tend to upgrade every year, we're seeing the innovation, we're realizing these changes, appreciating the changes that are being made every year, and really taking advantage of all these core technologies. But what I see just in the community as a whole, outside our little microcosm of just tech people and tech journalism, is people will hold off years and years, sometimes 4 to 6 years, just until a dramatic redesign, until they redesign it.
Right.
And this, we talked about the iPhone 4 and 4S really have a special place in people's heart because it's that industrial design, something that felt so premium, so like jewelry in your hand, we said. And this is kind of hearkening back to that. The iPhone 12 design brings back that box-like industrial feel. It feels really cool in the hand. And I attribute this almost entirely to just new designs. People will hold out until they change the way it looks.
Yeah, I think, like you said, I think the same exact thing. So if you have a design that's, well, what is it, four models old? 7, yeah, 6, 6S, 7, 8.
Because, I mean, if you're a nerd and fanatic about this like me and you are, of course the iPhone 11 was a new design compared to the 10 or something, but that's the same corner radius. I'll buy next year.
It feels different, though, I think is the thing. It's not, it just has a different feel in the hand as opposed to the rounded corners are nice. They have a certain, if you just pick up an 11 Pro Max and then pick up a 12, there's just a very different feel to them. Both are fine. They both do work well, but one just feels different. Now, some people have said they prefer the rounded corners to me. Other people prefer the square. I prefer the squared off corners. Just depends on what you like. So I think we'll see this cycle for, the next few years, and then another super cycle happen, and unless they come up with something completely different.
This one's interesting to me because holding a boxy piece of technology, somehow it makes it feel more premium. I don't know if that's because it's an iPhone 4 thing and that phone changed the industry, and so we associate it with that. Oh, this must be innovative because it feels boxy, it feels industrial, it feels cutting edge. I don't know if it's that, but to me, I've always felt like, okay, boxy feels more premium, but rounders and round but curves feel more ergonomic.
Yeah, there's definitely truth to that. The curves, I think the boxy feel has a rigidity or solid feel to it, and it's easier to hang on to, at least for me anyway. But the curved edges have that nice feel to it where it's everything smooth, and there's definitely that. And this also matters more if you have a form-fitting case or you don't use a case, so it just depends. These are things a lot of people don't care about, honestly, and I do, but a lot of people don't care about. And I like the boxy corners, and that's something I prefer. It's easier to pick up off the table even compared to like an 11 Pro Max. That was always, if it's face down, if you pick one of those up, if you don't have a case on it, it's harder than you think for some people. So it's the same sort of thing.
When we saw a lot of people buying the box-shaped cases for older iPhones just to have that feel, putting the box-shaped cases on an 11 or 6S or whatever, on that whole range, like you said. It all comes down to personal preference, but I think overall, people can agree that the rounder, curvier edges are more ergonomic, more comfortable to hold, but boxier design just feels easier to grip, and it feels more premium inherently.
Right. For whatever reason. Right.
Now, a man was sentenced to prison for spending the bank's money on 4 apartments, 2 cars, and 1 iPhone. Now, this is a crazy. So, Aaron, if you woke up and you saw an extra $1.3 million in your bank account, what would you do? Would you spend it all in one shot, or would you call the bank and say, I think there's been an error?
I'd figure out what the law is around that, I think, too.
And then make your decision.
But
I didn't know. I thought it was a bonus.
Yeah, I would definitely not spend it. I would, because I know they have a grace period of mistakes and things like that. And plus, I didn't earn that money. So as much as I would want to go buy something, some other car, a house, or whatever, I just wouldn't do it. I couldn't do it as much as I'd like to.
Same here. Now, Newsweek is reporting on this story. The guy's name is Roman Yurkov. He discovered extra $1.3 million in his bank account due to a technical error. Now, he's a 35-year-old car salesman, and in taking advantage of this error, he purchased a few things on May 31st, 2020. All in one day he did this. He bought a new BMW, a Mercedes, an iPhone 12 Pro Max, a couple of other things, 4 apartments.
He got a great deal, I guess. I don't know where he lives, but...
By the time he was arrested, the bank got its hands back on the cash, and only $540,000 was left out of the $1.3 million. So in one day, he spent nearly half of it.
Yeah, that's a lot. He was trying to do it quick, I guess, thinking they couldn't get it back. I don't know.
He was found guilty. He could be facing several years in prison for this, and by the time he gets released, iPhone 18 will be out. So,
oh, jeez.
Now, thanks to Taylor Hall for covering this story over on 9 to 5 Mac. That's this week in Apple crime. Now, Aaron, where can the people find you online?
They can find me on YouTube. Just look for ZOLLOTECH, or it's just youtube.com/ZOLLOTECH. On Twitter, ZOLLOTECH. On Instagram is the only place where it's my name. Although if you look for ZOLLOTECH, I'm there, but it's just Aaron Zollo.
And you can find me over on Instagram and Twitter. That's at Bromshank. It's just my name, BRAHMSHANK. Go ahead and follow Appleosophy on Instagram and Twitter. That's just Appleosophy. Go ahead and type it in, follow us. It'll be down in the show notes as well. Aaron, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a blast. We look forward to having you on again in the future. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you again next week.